You're giving him freedom to be a lifelong learner, that God's Spirit is shaping him. And this is part of being the soil that produces 100-fold, is over time, you're letting God shape you so that you're more and more able to listen and respond the way he spoke of in that parable. So, Bob, I know from being on the journey with you that you, over these years, have garnered lots of powerful life rhythms and habits and life hacks that you've used to live out this calling in a productive way and still maintain balance. And so what Micah and I would love to do is dive deeper into specific advice that, I know when you mentor, you ask good questions, but in this case, we'd love to hear just your raw advice. In the second episode, we'll take your story even deeper into some of these practical questions. And Micah, if you maybe guide us through with some of the thoughts that you and I have to prompt him.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, Bob, I just wanted to get a granular for people listening. It's like, I wanted to start and say, what is the one or two best things you've done just to nurture your marriage and deepen that relationship?
Marriage is not easy. We all know that. And there are bumps along the way. I think that some of the things that I've worked on to lift Leslie up, but therefore our marriage, is to empower her and encourage her in what she's doing. She made a huge sacrifice, although she would not call it this, in staying home and raising our kids. And she did a great job at it. And our kids, I think, are better off. I'm not saying that's appropriate for everybody. You get my point. And then when the light bulb went off as our kids were moving out of the house to move into God's international business, it was a time when I said, wait a minute, I'm not ready for that. I'm not used to that. You're going to go to the dangerous Middle East? And it was a process. I'll not forget, early on, she sent me an email and said, I'm going to sleep. I'm in a hotel. There's a guy with an Uzi at every corner of the hotel, and we're 1.5 miles from ISIS. And the next morning, I forget who started it, but it turned out she slept great, but I didn't sleep well at all. As you can imagine, that was the beginning of me turning this over to God and say, God, you've called her to this. I cannot stand in the way of that. And so I encourage her. So encouragement, lifting her up, participating. I go on occasion too, so that not only can I see what she's doing, but she can see I'm interested in what she's doing. We try, because we're both so busy, and we're schedulers, we schedule time together. It's not just when there's time available. We have to schedule it, otherwise it might not happen. So that's been a practice that's worked well for us. What we're at our advanced age, we've been married 35 years. We're still not in a proper rhythm in praying together. And I encourage anybody who's listening, because I know when we are in that rhythm, our marriage is going better than when we're not in that rhythm.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you think was the best things you guys did with your kids growing up to instill values in them.
As we all know, it's what you do and how you do it is more important than your words. And so when it was just the two of us, we would talk about how are we going to react to this situation or that situation, maybe involving the kids, maybe involving something on the outside, so that we can display the faith that we have and the trust we have in the Lord so that they can see that. So we worked on deliberately how we were going to react, not to be a phony person, but to be reasoned in the way we do it. Number two, praying for our kids and loving them. That sounds so basic, but if you don't do those things, not much else is going to matter at the end of the day. So we worked hard at that. We consciously, because we both came from the sort of checklist, get it done, succeed, move up the ladder, tried to back off that and encourage them to be, and not so much just to do. Now, they saw in their father, and to some extent their mother, somebody who does. So they have that in them, but I think they'd be the first to say, if I get this conversation with my son, we were in a chapter in a book, talk about your growing up. And we acknowledge, Bobby brought it up, and I agree with him. Dad, we didn't talk about feelings a whole lot when we were kids, and we're working hard at doing that. So I'm rambling, but they're some of the key points that we continue to work on in order to lift up our kids.
And Bob, what I hear in your conversations with Bobby is that is iterative learning together. That you work through your best as a parent in your 20s or 30s at whatever age you have kids. And we got married 41 years ago at 20. And, so we were just growing up when we were having kids, and now Carter's 36. And so he's got 2 little girls, and we're learning iteratively about, being fully present, things like that, he can learn from me, but also as he sees me critiquing my own parenting, he extends so much grace.
Yes.
And then he's learning and I'm learning. The other day, Carolyn, who's a missionary with Cru in Germany, and she'd just gotten married. She was, we have a standing monthly date dinner. She goes to dinner. I go to lunch because they're 6 hours ahead. And at the beginning of the year, Bob, I send her, money for 6 dinners out or 12 dinners out, and so we still have our monthly date that we had since she was 5. And this time she said she had been, talking with her Christian counselor that she sees regularly just for life's tune-ups, about what it was like growing up with a dad who was talked about the discipline and showing up and bringing your best because you represent God. And now she's got this shadow or this voice over her shoulder about nothing can be kind of messy or not planned out or not thoughtful. And so we're learning together. My son-in-law said to me our last vacation, he said, Dad, I think you'd benefit from being more spontaneous.
Bingo.
And I'm like, tell me all about it. Then I watched their eyes, Bob,
Yeah.
and I realized they've all had this conversation. I'm the last guy.
They ever talk about us, Lloyd? Yeah, I back to the issue I talked about sharing feelings. And when Bobby said, and Dad, you've gotten a whole lot better at that. And he gave me some examples.
Wow.
Boy, that made me feel good. Like, yeah, it's something I know is deficient. I want to be different. And he sees that in action. And so you're right. We're learning together. We're learning.
Yeah. And you're giving him freedom to be a lifelong learner, that God's Spirit is shaping him. And this is part of being the soil that produces 100-fold is over time, you're letting God shape you so that you're more and more able to listen and respond the way he spoke of in that parable. Right.
And as you also pointed out earlier, yes, I'm mentoring my son, but he's also mentoring me.
Yeah.
And what a joy that is. One of the things I wish we had done more of, or be personally, one-on-one time with our kids, because time was so precious. I'm going to be with the kids. It was usually with all 3 of them, or at least 2. I wish we had more one-on-one, because that's where the quality comes. And I've learned that in adulthood, and physical distances prevent us all from being together as much as we'd like. So the one-on-one is really key for as early as one can develop that habit.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you tell us a couple books or things you've been involved with that have been most impactful in you and your leadership?
Yeah, I would cite Tim Keller's book, Counterfeit Gods, as a key one in my life. We all have counterfeit gods, and they just spring up. The Calvin and repeated by Tim Keller, the human mind, the heart is an idol factory, and we just keep creating them, and they're good things generally. So that is a great book. Mark Batterson's book, All In, was also helpful to me. Also David Platt's book, Radical. I don't read too many books twice, but those I both have, and they're those kind of books. They hit you between the eyes. They can be, as you read them, they can be an emotional experience. So there are things that have been really helpful. Daily practices and other R.C. Sproul's Renewing Your Mind. It's 20-25 minutes every morning. I listen most mornings. It's R.C. and some of the other fellows, Ligoniers, brought on board. But boy, they're just great encouragements Sometimes it's instruction in the faith. Sometimes it's a little history. Sometimes it's a character development issue, but that's another piece of what has made me.
And Bob, you play music in church, not all the time, but sometimes. How's that? Well, first, that surprised me because you're so mathematical. And then I think you told me when you gave me a little demonstration in the church, and you said it's really all math.
There are two kinds of musicians, Lloyd. Ones that are math oriented, that's me. You give me a piece of music, I can read it, almost anything. But now you ask me to play something with no music, I can barely get through Happy Birthday. Some people can play anything. They hear a tune and they go play it. Put a piece of music in front of them and they're stuck. So that's been a joy. It's been I've explained this to you before, Lloyd. I think it's a Sabbath rest of sorts for me. When I'm directing the choir or playing the piano or the organ, I'm not a good enough musician to be able to do 2-3 things at the same time. I totally forget the stock market. So it's just a great, and of course, I think there's hardly a higher way to worship the Lord than through music. And it's how you memorize scripture. So I absolutely love sacred music.
That's amazing.
And I've been blessed by it.
Hey, Bob, if you were 25 or 30 again, what advice would you have for yourself?
Mm-hmm. My son asked me similar questions. Slow down, be more, do less. And I do remember when my son graduated from college, he said, Dad, what when you were my age, which you had done more of? Read more good books. I read a lot more good books than I used to, but in the profession I'm in, I'm constantly reading economics and current event sort of thing. But we need to, Romans 12:2, my life verse, we need to renew our minds. There are lots of ways to do it. One is to read good stuff.
Amen. How over the years have you learned to develop deep relationships with other guys in your life?
Hard work. I've been blessed. I ask the question because other people ask it. How many guys can you call with a problem at 2:00 in the morning? And, I throughout all my life would have had a few. I think, and Lloyd knows this, when I lost my job in 2012, it was a tough year for me. I had transferred some of my identity to my work. So I don't have the job anymore. So who am I? And a lot of spiritual lessons. But during that time frame, I oriented my life a bit, and some of the same friendships I just deepened, and some new ones along the way. I know how people operate without great friends. It's just a joy and a privilege.
Well, and Bob, one thing that you did back when you left BlackRock was to lean in on a diverse set of relationships, which takes courage, right? Because they get to look under the hood in your life. And then, one guy is a pastor, another guy is a childhood friend that hasn't become the head of the $1 trillion guy managing $3 trillion in equities. And yet he brings a voice, right? And I watched, as I listened in and participated in those conversations, I thought, man, this takes courage to open your life up and to a diverse group of people that all care about you, but they're going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
What was that like? And
it was one of the best experiences of my life. And Micah, Lloyd was one of those guys. It was 5 guys deliberately chosen that I knew me, loved the Lord. I knew would care for me, pray for me, encourage me, cajole me. And that's the part that came out. I think we only had 3 or 4 45-minute calls where it was all of us. And, they said, I'm not getting on this call unless you give me a couple of pages in advance about what's going on in your head. And that forced me. I mean, going back, I asked them, would you be aboard for me that starts now and ends the day God puts me in whatever the next perch is? And they were very helpful in getting me to focus on what God's calling really is on my life. You may remember this, Lloyd. One of the first calls I got was to be a college president. And I got all excited. I said to Leslie, can you imagine all the impact you'll have on those professors and the students? And And she said, yeah, and how many hours a week will you spend raising money? And I said, well, maybe I'm not called to be a college. And I wasn't. I'm called to do what God has gifted and interests me. I mean, you know the intersection, our gifting, our interests, and the world's needs. And you could put that together. That's our sweet spot.
Yeah. What's interesting is that if you hadn't taken the time to put all those chips in the middle of the table and try on different suits and different ideas and scenarios, you wouldn't be you're riding deep in the saddle right now because, you checked those things out and you found, no, I'm right here.
Right. Yeah. Well said, Lloyd. Thank you for the reinforcement now and your participation way back when. Praise God.
Bob, what have you and Leslie done to teach your kids to be generous? And obviously you guys have been blessed with significant means. And what have you done along the way to teach your kids to pass that along to them?
Yeah, this is a journey. And I wouldn't say we can check the box, although we're making progress. Several things. I don't know how many years ago we began to say, in this calendar year, would you identify 2, 3, 4 causes, make the case, you have to write a paper, make the case, and we'll make a contribution. Well, it was like pulling teeth. It just, okay, we're going to give $1,000 to your favorite charity, and can't you come up with one? So that's progressed. We, a number of years ago, less than 10, but more than 5, we gave our kids their inheritance. And told them nothing more coming. It's all going to the kingdom in various ways, shapes, or forms. So we gave them enough that it makes a difference, but not enough that they don't have to work, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that began a journey too, and now we're saying, when you give money away, let us know. If we're in agreement with the cause, which we almost always are, we'll match that gift.
That's a good idea.
They're the kinds of things we're doing, but get them to focus on. Yeah, I remember when I was their age. I wrote my checks and that was it. I didn't have time for anything else, and that's where they are, and I respect that. But we're developing the heart, I hope.
Yeah, we've had that exact same experience, not with that last idea. I really like that last idea of saying we'll match what you give to, but at first they were like, we give them a couple grand a year to give away. And then then they all got married, and then we kind of, but it would be like, okay, after Thanksgiving or after Christmas, we're all going to talk about what you chose, why you chose it. And then like 4 days before, Mom, could you send money from our National Christian Foundation account to so-and-so so they have something to talk about? It's like, you guys are not taking this seriously.
No, it's like the final exam we studied the night before.
And I wonder if Bobby said this, but Carter said to me at one point, he said, Dad, I've got a PhD and a good job, and this feels weird giving your money away.
Interesting. No, never heard that. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. So, I've learned from Bob Buford that when you don't know the answer to something, say it.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, I don't know the answer to that. Let me think about it. And I went back to him later and I said, you know what? A couple things. Number one, this is not our money. We've already set a limit on our spending, and this money is in National Christian Foundation. And secondly, this is like a football team where, we want to be able to pass funds down, but if we don't include you now, it's like a football team practicing where everybody practices all week except the receivers.
Yes.
They only come out on Sunday, and then you throw this big Hail Mary and you hope like heck they catch it.
Right.
So we're going to practice so that you get to be better givers than we are. And we're like you said, we're like on the 40-yard line, I think, on that.
Right. Another point that comes to mind for some listeners, it's not all wine and roses. We have 3 kids. And Lloyd, I think, knows one is not walking with the Lord, our oldest, having made a commitment and a lot of fruit in high school and college years, subsequently just walked away from God. And that's still where we are. We pray for her. We love on her. We have a good relationship with her. And my prayer originally was, Lord, kind of get her moving in the right direction. Then my next prayer was, Lord, if you have to slap her across the face to get her moving in the right direction, go for it. Now my prayer is, Lord, would you make this happen before I pass from the scene? I want to see her back with the Lord.
That's
so
amazing.
I'm encouraging those who have those sorts of situations.
Well, we appreciate you being so open about that. We'll wrap up with this question, Bob. You obviously are a man who has lived life well, and you're finishing well. What are some keys with however many years God gives you remaining? What do you see some keys to finishing your life well?
Focus and follow through. And I would have said that 25 years ago. Have in mind what God has gifted you to do, has equipped you to do, has interested you to do, and go at it with all you've got. As you guys know, retirement is not in the Bible. Doesn't mean we don't retire from the job we have, but we don't retire to put our feet up. The number of people I run across, they can't wait for the weekend and for vacation and for retirement. Nothing wrong with those three things, but my goodness, don't live for them. We are God's, and I said earlier, our time is the Lord. So have in mind what you're going to do. Help the guy down the street. As Mother Teresa said, help the one in front of you and then go to the next one. Don't think you have to tackle the world all at once.
That's amazing. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your time today. There are just so many nuggets of wisdom there, and we appreciate it. We know you're very busy, so thank you so much for meeting with Lloyd and I today and just sharing all of your thoughts.
I love your cause. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to the 100X podcast. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast service. We would greatly appreciate it if you could rate the show and leave us a review. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor Investments, whose mission is to build America's most generous real estate company. To learn more, please visit anchorinv.com.